So now we're moving on to the second type that uses accuracy as a driver. We're moving on to ISTPs. And remember, we're still in the IP realm, so we're still in the rightness component of the firm model. And now we're going to talk about accuracy sensation, the ISTP. Now, if you notice, before when we coupled all of the perceiving driver types, right? We started with exploration, then went to sensation, then we went to memory and ended with perspectives. They were all, if they have the same driver process, they were all either intuitive or sensory, right? So both ENPs lead with intuition, right? They lead with exploration. But now that we've moved on to the judging processes, what's interesting is that the two types that share the same judging process will actually change their co-pilot from intuitive to sensing. So that's a really interesting distinction that has a lot of different connotations to it. If you are dealing with the same driver judging process, you're going to have a completely different sensory or intuitive co-pilot. Very important to remember. All right, so let's talk about accuracy as a driver, but paired with the sensing process as opposed to an intuitive process. Let's talk about ISTPs. So we're talking about the same thing with accuracy, all right? Zoomed in data points, frameworks, but instead of pairing it with conceptualizing, exploration is about what if, new concepts, seeing the connections between disparate ideas, zooming in and taking up a 20,000-foot view of conceptualizing and abstracts. We're now marrying this ability to zoom in and understand information and data with a sensory process that wants to be at the bottom of the ladder of abstraction. It wants to be engaged with the real world. It wants to be touching a creative, It wants to be touching a concrete reality. It wants to be kinesthetic. So when you pair accuracy with sensation, as opposed to getting an architect of thought, you now get somebody who understands machines on a whole new level. Okay, they're more like the architects of machinery. And just recently, we did a series of YouTube videos where we talked about each of the types in short. We just kind of did a quick little overview. And we talked about ISTPs as being the natural mechanics. And there was an ISTP who came on that said, well, we're not all mechanics, right? But it's not so much about being a mechanic as it is understanding machines, understanding with like a sixth sense. And what's interesting is they said, we're not all mechanics, we just understand how things work. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. You're an actual mechanic. You just understand how things work. Now, when you pair accuracy, which is the ability to zoom in, see congruencies and incongruencies, see consistencies and inconsistencies, and you pair that with the material concrete realm, you start to understand in real time how all of these pieces of data represented in widgets or parts of a machine, you understand in real time how all this stuff is, all this information that is put into these concrete items, how they're working together in the moment, all right? Just like an INTP can look at an idea or a concept and immediately see where the flaws are, an ISTP can look at a machine and immediately see where the flaws are. Now, this is different than how effectiveness sees systems, all right? Systems are a matching of resources over time in a linear fashion to get to an end game goal or result. For accuracy, this is not so much about the linear progression of resources as it is what if all these things came together at the same time, right, and had all these moving parts moving around at the same time, and how do we manage all of that orchestration, right, all of that dance of all these things happening simultaneously and then be able to see the weakness, okay? That's different than a linear system and being able to see which step is going to be the weakness. So that nuance is important when you're profiling somebody and you realize they're a thinker. It's important to remember the nuance between seeing something that's not going to pan out over time versus seeing the weakness in something that is happening simultaneously all right now. Okay, two different mindsets. Now, accuracy and sensation still requires the accuracy person to get outside of themselves. It requires the person to engage with the concrete real world. And that means that they have to be able to test their ideas and concepts on something physical and tangible. And if they're wrong, if they put together a machine, right, and they think this part should fit with this part and it doesn't, the machine will give them that feedback, right? The world will say, you were wrong in how you thought that these two things should be put together. However, if they don't go to the outside world for information, if they don't use their hands-on kinesthetic experience, right, if they don't actually experience something in the now, they will skip the co-pilot and go to the 10-year-old, which is about pattern recognizing, right? It's about internal pattern recognizing and projecting a reality. It's about guessing what's going on in somebody's head. It's about figuring out what's going to happen in the future. But really, what is that but a projection of reality? And especially as a weakness. As a weakness, it is a desired pattern recognition inside you that projects onto reality what you already wanted to think. So the combination of accuracy and perspectives means that there is a sense of pattern recognition that supports a conclusion that might be totally wrong. And this is oftentimes where we see conspiracies come up. ISTPs are the #1 most likely type to be a conspiracy thinker, with an INTP that follows it follows. I actually think maybe INTPs might be a distant second. ISTPs are most likely to be conspiracy theorists, and the reason why is because their pattern recognition of perspectives, which is still young. Okay, now it's something that's conscious for them. It's in the right side of the car. It's going to be something that they utilize and can utilize well. But if they're not requiring real world, immediate, concrete feedback, okay, if they're not requiring that verifiability piece that sensation requires of them, then they can project anything they want to. They can project any pattern that kind of even sort of makes sense to their mind, or to accuracy. Now remember, accuracy is separated from social thinking, and it's also separated from common sense. So accuracy is trying to figure out things without checking in with others, right? Accuracy is trying to figure out what the data says to them. But it has to have that extroverted component. It has to be getting outer world feedback. If it's not getting outer world feedback, then it's only going to be able to rely on what it already wants to believe. With INTPs, it was memory. It was what they already know to be true. With perspectives, it's pattern recognition. It's speculating. It's saying, I want to believe in this conclusion, so I'm going to create a speculation that matches what I want to believe. And so, because perspectives can be fairly paranoid because it's trying to figure out what's going on in somebody else's head, if it's a weakness, if it's not checking in with reality, it can get very conspiratorial. Now, it doesn't just have to be like ancient aliens conspiracy. It can be my mate is up to no good and is cheating on me. All right, so it could be that kind of conspiracy. It can be that nobody likes me, right, and everybody has it out for me. Especially since Harmony's the 3-year-old, especially since checking in with how other people feel about you and your reputation is a bit of a blind spot. So ISTPs can get very paranoid about how other people are seeing them because they've got sensation, which is, you know, how other people view you is on your radar, but you're not checking in with it enough to actually confirm how people are seeing you, and so you're just projecting it, and now it's all a bunch of fear. And a protection to make sure that you're always right. People are out to get you. They know you're right. They know they're wrong, but they can't handle that, and so they're now out to get you. Now, that's what it looks like when it's all messed up, right? When it's not working well. When it is working well, when the accuracy person goes to sensation, I mean, we talked about ESTPs being some of the best athletes. There is my speculation, my speculation is that if you did a Myers-Briggs personality profile on every single person who won a gold medal ever, right, in the Olympics, you would see an overwhelming number of ISTPs. They would be massively overrepresented in the Olympic population. ISTPs, because they can focus, because they can do precision, because they're looking for those little nuanced leverage points, and they're combining it with a concept of kinesthetic intelligence, right? They're combining it with their ability to see their body as a machine. When those two things are put together, now you've got Bruce Lee. Okay, Bruce Lee's an ISTP. Now you've got somebody who is such an extraordinary master of the human body as a machine that they can do almost anything. Another example would be anybody who goes into the arts. Some of the most precision drummers on the planet, like those drummers who drum for the really hardcore metal bands, like the super super duper hardcore metal bands. Most of their drummers are ISTPs because they can just, I mean, their speed, their proficiency is insane. So anytime they're matching that precision component with something that it has a sensation expression, something that requires them to be engaging with something in the outer world, even if that's a drum kit, that's when you see their genius really come out. And when they do that, right, when they're able to combine accuracy with sensation, then they can pepper perspectives in later. Perspectives is, maybe there's a different way of doing this. Maybe there's a different way of seeing this. Maybe I can create something that will help people see things in a different way. And then it's not a conspiracy. Now it's a way of impacting how other people see reality. You actually have influence now. As opposed to being on the receiving end of conspiracy, you actually now can bring an influential, like changing how people think. You can now bring influence in the world because you just ran the 4-minute mile and now everybody knows it's possible. All right, so how does the 3-year-old show up for an ISTP? Very similar to the INTP. It's very much about not really feeling connected. It's a matter of fearing a bad reputation. It's a matter of, getting a lot of... ISTPs will get less negative feedback for accuracy than an INTP will, because they are more likely to implement it in a physical way. It's less threatening than INTPs that want to implement it in a way that changes how we see reality. INTPs are more likely to bring accuracy out in a way that questions some of our assumptions about information in general. So INTPs will actually get more negative feedback for their ideas than an ISTP will. An ISTP will get less negative feedback about how they're showing up with accuracy because they're doing it in a way that's non-threatening and is physical. And in a way that we admire, we truly admire. We don't have to change how we see reality in order to admire that Olympic athlete. But if an INTP brings a new concept of reality together, now we have an entire generation of scientists that have to die before they'll even accept the actually true base theories. So ISTPs get less negative feedback for their ideas and concepts. However, they're still as socially clumsy in the way that they still have extroverted feeling as their 3-year-olds. So they'll do things like, burp and fart in front of people, and everybody else is mortified and they're like, what's the big idea? So oftentimes to spot an ISTP is you'll look for somebody who has no problem looking like an anarchist, lots of tattoos, lots of piercings, right? You've got somebody who will show up in a way that they really don't care if you don't like how they're dressed. That said, everybody has a desire for connection. Everybody has a desire for emotional connection, even if it's an infantile version. So you'll see them do the same thing as INTPs. They'll blow up if they are going to the 3-year-old, if they're overstressed, or if they're using accuracy too much and it's not the right tool for the job. They'll also throw temper tantrums. They'll blow up. They're more likely to be physical about it because they have sensation on their radar. So they're more likely to punch walls. They're more likely to actually get in a bar fight or a fist fight. Their physical, their extroverted feeling temper tantrum is more likely to actually have casualties, right? However, that said, if they're going to go to that place, as opposed to letting them, beat the snot out of somebody or even beat the snot out of themselves in some way, it's better for them to connect on a physical level, if possible, like actually physically touch somebody, feel connected, be with their mate, have an open-hearted space with somebody that they know they can trust, hang out with friends, go on a fishing party together, whatever it is that will make them feel connected, or like watch a comedian and laugh with them or laugh with their friends. That's really what they're looking for, is that emotional connection. So an ISTP and an INTP, both leading with accuracy as a driver, manifest totally differently. Now you could see, again, we're talking about an introverted, subjective decision-making process. And the more that accuracy uses sensation, the more, because it's focused on sensation things to be able to decide what they need to do, the more they're using sensation, the faster the decision-making process will be. However, they can make decisions slowly if they're just not sure, if they just haven't explored this terrain yet. If they haven't actually engaged with it, it can be rather slow. But regardless, they don't want to be wrong. So you will see ISTPs, just like INTPs, cop an attitude sometimes when they feel like being right is is being threatened. And of course, the best way for them to become a better version of themselves and to engage with somebody who's, put their flag in the ground and won't let you at all tell them how it is in any other way is to persuade them by showing them, for an ISTP, specifically in the concrete world. Now, they might still ignore you. They might go to the perspectives process and decide to believe whatever they want to believe. However, when they will open themselves up to that co-pilot, that is when they are the best. And, again, STPs, great at anything that's a machine that is an extension of their body, they are masters at. So you're going to see a lot of them do extreme sports. You're going to see a lot of them as race car drivers. You're going to see a lot of them adrenaline junkies, right? Or doing something that intrigues their adrenaline component. This will not be as insistent for them as it would be for a sensation driver, right? That needs to have that fueling of the sensation process. This is more going to be fun for them, right? They can sit for long periods of time alone reading journals about whatever's interesting to them, and they won't have to get outside of their comfort zone. But if they do get into sensation, it's usually fun for them, and they'll do something that is adrenaline oriented. All right, so that's the ISTP. And now we're going to move on to people who use introverted feeling or authenticity as their driver and see how that shows up for them as IPs and in the form model.